My name is Cameron Dobbs, and Up Next has changed my life. I'm not even kidding you. A little background about me: I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I grew up in a Christian home and a Christian school all my life. I moved to Miami in 2017 to pursue a volleyball career at the University of Miami. Go Canes! Ever since moving to Miami, I became a part of Metro Life Church and have been serving on the creative and social media team ever since, and I love every minute of it. I also had the honor of working on Chris's Up Next launch team this past year, getting ready for the big book release. Now, before this book even officially came out, I was able to get my hands on a hard copy, and I read it in 6 days. I read this book before Chris even read the hard copy of this book, and that's saying a lot because I'm a pretty slow reader. Now, I could go on and on telling you all about the good John Mayer, Chick-fil-A, and all the funny references in this book, and of course how the University of Miami is the best school in the nation. But you can do that all by yourself when you get a copy of this book. I'm going to just tell you how this book has impacted my life so much. Now, I'm at a unique position as a leader. Like I said, I play volleyball at the University of Miami. I'm also the co-president of our FCA at UM, and I'm on the Student Athlete Advisory Committee at UM, working heavily with all ACC schools. Now, I'm telling you that because you don't even have to be heavily involved in ministry for Up Next to apply to your life. You also don't have to have a huge role as a leader for Up Next to apply to your life. In fact, with Instagram nowadays, I think that anyone has a platform and anyone has a leader. If you're on Instagram, you probably have anywhere between 500 and a few thousand followers. That makes you a leader, and that makes you have a huge platform to use for God's glory. This book has impacted my life so much, and most of that hasn't even been inside the four walls of a church. First off, I'm going to tell you what my 3 takeaways were. First, to be intentional. Second, to be the current, not the wave. And lastly, to be the example, never the excuse. Those are my biggest takeaways after reading Up Next. And this book has not only changed the way that I look at things, but also how I do things. Like I said, I play volleyball at UM, and this past season, we had a crazy season, and I knew that I had to be intentional if I wanted to see change happen. That simply happened because I had a few teammates that were out and they were injured and sick, so I knew that I had to be intentional caring for them. So whether it was taking them ice cream, helping get their medicine at the hospital, or simply just sitting in their bed with them and talking with them for 3 hours, I was intentional about caring for my teammates. In January, a few of my teammates and I started meeting with our associate head coach and talking about the culture of the University of Miami volleyball program, the whole program overall. First off, we defined a few values, and one of our values was toughness. We defined toughness as being good anyway. Immediately, I thought of Up Next. I thought of what Chris was teaching on how to be the example and never the excuse, to be a current and not a wave. You see, Chris tells us that currents are able to control their situation, while waves simply flow along, and waves are being dictated by their situation. I had these sayings constantly in my mind 24/7. I kid you not, I'd be in the weight room struggling on bench one day after the weight was so heavy, and after thinking I wanted to give up, I'd start thinking back to being the example and never the excuse. I would tell myself, Cam, you gotta push harder. This weight may be hard, but you have to be the example that when life gets tough, you have to get tougher. I couldn't be the excuse showing my teammates when the weight got too heavy, you could just drop it. You could just let it fall and give up. I also had 2 concussions this year, and after reading Up Next, I had my second one. I knew that this time around, I couldn't let this concussion affect me. When you have a concussion, it's really easy to get depressed. It's a known fact. And I knew that I couldn't be a wave. I couldn't let this concussion dictate my situation or my attitude or my effort. Rather, I had to be a current, and I had to be an example, and use this as not use this as an excuse, but rather be an example and just push through. That I had to be a current and control the situation that this concussion was giving me. So I was still out at FCA every single week on the platform doing my job. I was still pushing myself in school. I was at church every Sunday and Monday. And I was still on the volleyball court cheering my teammates on, even if that was just on the sideline. Now, going back to these culture meetings. Like I said, I was talking a lot about Up Next and how it relates so much to my life as a leader on this volleyball team and in ministry. So I knew I had to be intentional about this opportunity. What did I do? Well, I walked straight up to my associate head coach and I said, "You need to read Up Next." Is he involved in ministry? No. But I knew that Up Next applies to all leaders, and that included him. So after he saw how so much truth and wisdom and good advice was in Up Next, he told me that I should create a book report or some sort of presentation to present Up Next to the University of Miami volleyball team. So in fall, I'll be talking all about Up Next to my team. How cool is that? I also mentioned I'm the University of Miami's co-president for our FCA, our Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Co-president with me is football player Robert Burns. When Up Next came out, I knew Burns had to get a copy as well. So of course I got him one. FCA at is really good at blasting on social media when we have our events, what time they are, that we have free Chick-fil-A, and all kinds of details. We're also really good about walking on campus and handing out flyers to people, inviting as many people as we can to get in the room. However, I didn't think we were as good at celebrating the people inside the room already. Now I'm going to break a rule on this whole video and I'm going to read a quote from the book. On page 110, Chris says this: "Stop focusing on how many people are getting in the car and focus on making sure the destination is worth the trip. If the destination is worth driving to, then you'll have more people wanting to tag along next time. So whether it's 70 or 700, let's forget the people who didn't show up and focus on being the best leaders for the people in the room." How good is that? It's so good. I knew that at FCA we had to be more intentional about the people who were in the room already. Chris talks a lot about the amount of energy and time we spend inviting people, whether it's recruiting them for your college team or inviting them to your church. We spend a lot of time getting the word out, and there's nothing wrong with that. We just need to make sure that we are being as intentional of celebrating the people inside the room, and that's what the change needed to be made at FCA. So ever since reading Up Next, I've talked to FCA leaders, and we have started small groups within FCA as a whole and within our leader group. Now it's just a baby step, but we're being a lot more intentional about celebrating the people inside the room, just like Chris is talking about in Up Next. I could go on and on about how impactful Up Next has been in my life, but I know it'll be the exact same for you. I've read this book twice already and can't get over the amount of wisdom, truth, and just good advice is in here for leaders of all sizes of teams and all different organizations. I'm so thankful I've already given so many books to all of my friends and my family and my coaches and my teammates and even my high school lit teacher. So Chris, thank you for writing it. You guys, do yourself a favor and get yourself a copy. It's changed my life, and I know it will yours too.